Captain Park was sleeping in her quarters when the alarm pulled her from her dreams. She was on her feet before her eyes fully opened, years of military training moving her body while her mind caught up. The red lights flashing in the corridor told her this was not a drill. She reached the bridge in under 2 minutes. Her crew was already there, staring at the main screen with faces she had never seen them make before. Fear. Pure, simple fear. "Report," she said, taking her seat. Lieutenant turned to face her. He was a young man, barely 30, known for staying calm in difficult situations. Right now, his hands were shaking. "Captain, we received a transmission. It came from outside our solar system. It's not human." Park felt her heart stop for just a moment. Humanity had been searching for alien life for centuries. They had found nothing. They had begun to believe they were alone in the universe. They were wrong. "Play it," she ordered. The screen changed. A creature appeared and Park had to force herself not to look away. It was tall, perhaps 3 meters, with a body like an insect. Its shell was dark purple and its eyes, it had 6 of them, glowed with cold blue light. When it spoke, the voice was like stones grinding together. "Primitive species of the 3rd planet, we are the Empire. We have ruled this galaxy for 40,000 of your years. Your expansion into space has been observed. It ends now." The creature paused, as if waiting for this information to sink in. "You will surrender all colonies. You will submit to our rule. You will serve the Empire. You have 72 of your hours to comply. If you refuse, your species will be removed from existence. This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning." The screen went dark. Nobody on the bridge spoke. Nobody moved. The weight of what they had just heard pressed down on them like a physical thing. Park was the first to find her voice. "Send this to Earth Command, immediately. Use every channel we have." Nodded and began working at his station. His hands were still shaking, but he was doing his job. Good man, Park thought. She looked around at her crew. These were the people who had chosen to serve at Nu, a mining colony on the edge of human space. They were not soldiers. They were engineers, scientists, pilots. They had come here to dig ore from asteroids and send it back to the inner worlds. Now they were the first humans to receive a message from an alien empire that wanted to enslave them. "Captain," one of her officers said quietly, "what do we do?" Park thought about her home. She thought about Earth, about Korea, about the small village where she had grown up. She thought about her mother, who had told her stories of their ancestors, farmers and warriors who had survived invasions, occupations, and disasters that should have destroyed them. "We do what humans have always done," she said. "We fight." 3 days later, the response came from Earth. Admiral Myra appeared on screens across all human worlds. She was an old woman with gray hair and a face lined by decades of service. She had fought in the Mars Rebellion, the Belt Wars, and a dozen smaller conflicts. She had never lost. "People of Earth and the colonies," she said, "you have seen the alien message. You know what they demand. They want us to surrender. They want us to become slaves." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was iron. "We decline." The transmission went to every human world. It also went to the fleet waiting at the edge of the system. "We decline." 2 simple words, but they changed everything. High Commander received the human response in his command chamber. He was old, even by standards, nearly 800 years. He had conquered 17 species in his career. Each one had surrendered within hours of receiving the Empire's ultimatum. Some had begged, some had cried, all had submitted. These humans were different. They had said no. Found this amusing. He had studied the humans briefly. Small creatures, soft bodies, short lives. They had only been in space for a few hundred years. Their ships were primitive, their weapons weak. They had no idea what they were facing. "How many ships do the humans have at this Nu?" he asked. His second officer checked the data. 47, High Commander, mostly mining vessels and light patrol craft. And our fleet, 3,000 warships, High Commander. Made a sound that might have been laughter. Send the fleet, destroy the colony, leave nothing alive. Let this be a lesson to the rest of their species. The fleet moved toward Nu like a wave of death. 3,000 ships, each one bristling with weapons that could crack planets. They flew in perfect formation, confident in their power. They had done this before. They knew how it would end. At Nu, Captain Park watched them come. Her 47 ships were lined up between the colony and the approaching fleet. Behind her, 2 million civilians were trying to evacuate. They had ships, but not enough. They had time, but not much. Looked at the tactical display. The numbers were impossible, 47 against 3,000. It was not a battle, it was a death sentence. "Captain," he said, "we cannot win this." Park nodded. She knew the math. She had known it from the moment she saw the fleet. "No," she agreed, "we cannot win, but that was never the point." She stood and faced her crew. These people had served with her for years. They trusted her. They would follow her orders, and those orders would kill them. "Listen to me," she said. "Today we die. I will not lie to you about that. We do not have the ships to survive this battle. But behind us, 2 million people are trying to escape. Every minute we fight, more of them get away. Every minute we hold, more children reach the evacuation ships." She looked at each of them in turn. "They think we are weak. They think we will break. They think this will be easy. Let us show them how wrong they are. Let us show them what humans are made of. And when historians write about this day, and they will, let them say that the people of Nu did not run. Let them say we fought. Let them say we made the enemy pay for every inch of space in blood." She sat back in her chair and opened a channel to all her ships. "All vessels, this is Captain Park. The enemy is coming. We are outnumbered. We will probably die today. But before we do, we are going to teach these aliens something they have never learned in 40,000 years of conquest." She took a deep breath. "We are going to teach them fear." The channel was silent for a moment. Then, one by one, her captains responded. "Mining vessel, standing with you, Captain. Patrol ship, ready to fight. Transport, we're not leaving." 47 ships, miners and patrol craft and cargo haulers. None of them were warships. None of them had been built for battle, but every single one of them stayed. Park smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly how the story would end and had chosen to write it anyway. "All ships," she said, "engage the enemy." The first ships entered weapons range. Their cannons fired, painting space with lines of burning light. The Battle of Nu had begun. And nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same. High Commander had calculated it carefully. 47 primitive ships against 3,000 warships. The humans would fire a few shots, realize they were doomed, and either surrender or die quickly. That was how it always happened. That was how it had happened 17 times before. But 15 minutes passed, and the humans were still fighting. An hour passed, the humans were still fighting. A day passed, the humans were still fighting. And had lost 200 ships. He stood in his command chamber, staring at the tactical display, unable to understand what he was seeing. 200 ships. 200. He had never lost more than 3 in any conquest. These were the mightiest warships in the galaxy, crewed by soldiers who had trained for centuries. And they were being destroyed by miners. How, he demanded, how is this possible? Fleet Commander, his second in command, brought up the battle recordings. What they showed made no sense. A human mining ship, its hull torn open and burning, flew directly into a cruiser. The mining ship's reactor exploded, destroying both vessels. A human patrol craft, engines dead and weapons offline, drifted toward a battleship. When they tried to capture it, the humans inside detonated the fuel tanks. They chose death over surrender. Human pilots ejected from their destroyed ships, then aimed their escape pods at vessels. They used their own bodies as weapons. "They are insane," said quietly. "They are completely insane." Watched the recordings again. He saw a human ship take a hit that would have disabled any vessel. Instead of retreating, it continued forward and fired all its remaining weapons at point-blank range. He saw human crews fight until their ships were literally falling apart around them. He saw humans die with their hands still on the controls, still trying to fight. "No," said slowly, "they are not insane, they are something else, something we have not seen before." On the surface of Nu, the fighting was even worse. Sergeant Bay had been a soldier for 20 years. He had trained for combat against other humans, against pirates, against any enemy he might face. He had never expected to fight aliens. Now he was leading 300 soldiers against a ground force of 10,000. The math was bad. The situation was bad. But Bay did not care about math or situations. He cared about the civilians trying to reach the evacuation ships. He cared about the children crying in the underground shelters. He cared about doing his job. "Fall back to position 7, he ordered through his radio. "Let them think we are running, then hit them from the sides." His soldiers obeyed. They retreated through the streets of New City, leading the troops deeper into the colony. The aliens followed, confident in their numbers. That was their mistake. The first explosion came from a building that had seemed empty. Human soldiers had hidden there for hours, waiting. They opened fire on the column from above. The second explosion came from underground. Humans had placed charges in the sewers. An entire unit vanished in a ball of fire. The third explosion came from behind. Human soldiers had circled around and attacked the rear guard. The aliens were confused. In their experience, a smaller force always ran from a larger one. It was simple logic, but these humans did not run. They hid. They ambushed. They struck and vanished and struck again. A captain finally cornered a group of human soldiers in a warehouse. The humans were outnumbered 10-1. They had no way out. The captain expected them to surrender. Instead, the humans charged. They ran straight at the soldiers, screaming and firing. Most of them died in seconds, but a few reached the enemy lines, and those few fought with knives, with fists, with their teeth. They fought until they stopped moving, and even then some of them kept fighting. One human soldier took a wound that would have killed any. His right arm was gone, burned away by plasma fire. He should have been dead. Instead, he picked up his weapon with his left hand and kept shooting. He killed 3 more before he finally fell. The captain stood over the human bodies, trying to understand what he had just witnessed. "What are these things?" he asked nobody in particular. In the medical station beneath the city, Dr. Lee was working. She was a small woman, barely 1.5 meters tall, with gentle eyes and steady hands. She had become a doctor to save lives. Now she was trying to save lives in the middle of a war. The wounded came in endless waves. Soldiers with burns and broken bones. Civilians caught in the crossfire. Children who had seen things no child should see. She treated them all, working without sleep, without rest, barely stopping to eat. Then the prisoners arrived. Bay's soldiers had captured a few enemy troops during the fighting. They brought them to the medical station because they did not know what else to do with them. Lee looked at the alien prisoners. They were wounded. One had a leg that was badly damaged. Another had burns across its chest. The other doctors hesitated. These were the enemy. These were the creatures trying to kill them all. Lee did not hesitate. She walked to the first prisoner and began treating its wounds. "What are you doing?" one of her assistants asked. "My job," she said simply. The with the damaged leg stared at her. It did not understand. In all its years of service, it had never seen a conquered species show mercy to its conquerors. "Why?" it asked in broken Korean, using a translation device. "We are trying to kill you. Why do you help us?" Lee finished wrapping its leg and looked into its alien eyes. "Because this is who we are," she said. "We fight when we must, but we do not become monsters." Above the planet, the battle continued. Captain Park had lost 30 ships, but she had destroyed more than 200 vessels, and more importantly, the evacuation was almost complete. "Report," she ordered. "90% of civilians are away," Captain said. "Another 30 minutes and they will all be safe." 30 minutes. Park looked at the tactical display. She had 17 ships left, 17 ships against more than 2,000 enemies. "Can we hold for 30 minutes?" she asked. Did not answer. He did not need to. They both knew the answer. Park opened a channel to her remaining ships. "All vessels, this is the captain. The civilians are almost safe. We need to hold for 30 more minutes. I know what I am asking. I know the price. But those people down there are counting on us. Our families are counting on us." She paused. "I am ordering nobody to stay. If anyone wants to retreat, go now. No one will blame you." Not a single ship moved. Park smiled that strange, sad smile again. "Then let us finish what we started." The next 30 minutes were the longest of her life. Her ships fought with everything they had. They used tactics no military academy had ever taught, tactics born of desperation and fury. They flew into the enemy's formation and fired in all directions. They used asteroids as cover. They rammed enemy ships when their weapons failed. One by one they died. But they held. When the last evacuation ship jumped to safety, only 3 human vessels remained. Park's ship, was barely functional. Its engines were failing. Its weapons were gone. Its hull was cracked in a dozen places. But 2 million civilians were safe. Captain said, "The evacuation is complete. We did it." Park looked at the flagship, the massive ship where High Commander watched the battle. It was damaged from earlier fighting, its shields weakened. "Lieutenant," she said, "set a collision course for that ship." Understood immediately. He did not argue, he simply entered the coordinates. Park opened a final transmission. It went to both sides, human and. "This is Captain Park of the new defense fleet. To my people, we won. The civilians are safe. Remember us and remember what we proved today." She turned her attention to the fleet. "And to you, the mighty empire, this was just a mining colony. We were miners and patrol officers and cargo pilots. We were nobody, and we killed 200 of your warships." She leaned forward, and her eyes were burning. "This was just our mining colony. Wait until you meet our soldiers." He accelerated toward the flagship, tried to move his ship, but the damage slowed him down. He watched the tiny human vessel grow larger on his screens. Captain Park died with her hands on the controls, driving her broken ship into the heart of the enemy flagship. The explosion crippled his vessel and killed hundreds of his crew. And across the galaxy, humanity heard her final words. "Wait until you meet our soldiers." In his damaged command chamber, High Commander stared at the ruins of his fleet. He had won the battle. New was his, but he had lost 237 ships to a mining colony. He thought about what the human captain had said. This was just a mining colony. For the first time in 800 years, felt something cold move through his chest. He would later learn that humans called this feeling doubt. He reached for his communication device and called the. "I need reinforcements," he said. "I need 10,000 more ships." The voice on the other end was surprised. 10,000 for this small species. Looked at the debris field that had once been his fleet. "Just send them," he said. "Send them now." The Empire had taken 3 human colonies. Their flags flew over human cities. Their soldiers walked human streets. By every measure of war, they were winning. But they were not winning. On the colony world of, Commander stood in what had once been a peaceful city. Now it was a nightmare. Fires burned constantly. Explosions echoed through the night. His soldiers could not sleep because the humans attacked without warning at any hour from any direction. Another supply convoy was destroyed, his officer reported. 20 vehicles, all soldiers dead. How? Demanded. We have 300,000 troops on this planet. The human population is only 2 million. Most of them are civilians. That is the problem, Commander. We cannot tell which ones are civilians. Understood what his officer meant. In every other conquest, civilians stayed quiet. They hid in their homes. They did not resist. But human civilians were different. A farmer who grew vegetables by day planted explosives by night. A teacher who educated children taught them how to sabotage equipment. A grandmother who could barely walk carried messages for the resistance. Everyone was a soldier. Everyone was an enemy. On Earth, General Shin watched the reports from the occupied colonies. He was an old man with a face like carved stone and eyes that had seen too much death. He had spent his entire life preparing for war. Now the biggest war in human history was unfolding, and he was determined to win it. Protocol Dandelion is working, he said to President Han. Every colony we lose becomes a trap. They can take the land, but they cannot hold it. President Han was a woman in her 60s, elected just 2 years before the war began. She had expected to spend her term building schools and hospitals. Instead, she was fighting for the survival of her species. How many civilians have we lost? She asked. General Shin did not look away from her eyes. 400,000. The number hung in the air between them. 400,000 people dead. Mothers and fathers and children, farmers and teachers and doctors, people who had never wanted to fight. And how many? 3 million. President Han closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her face was hard. Continue the operation and begin planning for the next phase. Far across the galaxy, in the great council chamber of a historian named was giving a presentation. Was unusual for instead of becoming a soldier or administrator, he had chosen to study the species the Empire conquered. He believed that understanding the enemy was more important than simply destroying them. Now he stood before the Elder Council, the 5 ancient beings who had ruled the Empire and tried to make them understand what they were facing. The problem, said, is that we have never encountered a species like this before. He brought up images on the great screen, pictures of human history collected from captured databases. Humans evolved on what they call Earth. It is a death world. One of the elders spoke. Explain. A death world is a planet where almost everything can kill you. Earth has extreme temperatures, violent storms, earthquakes, floods, and volcanic eruptions. It has diseases that spread through the air. It has predators in every environment. It has poisonous plants and insects. Change the image. Any other species would have died on such a planet, but humans did not die. They adapted. They survived. They became this. He showed images of human history. Humans hunting animals 10 times their size. Humans building cities in deserts and jungles and frozen wastelands. Humans fighting each other in wars that lasted generations. They have never stopped fighting, said. Not once in their entire history. They fight their environment. They fight other species. They fight each other. War is not something strange to them. War is normal. The elders shifted uncomfortably. Surely, one said, they cannot match our technology, our experience, our numbers. No, agreed. They cannot, but they have something we lack. What? Search for the right word and language. He could not find one. Instead, he used the human word. Spite. I do not understand. Spite is when you keep fighting not because you can win, but because you want your enemy to suffer. It is when you destroy something valuable simply to prevent your enemy from having it. It is when you continue struggling even after hope is gone, just to make your enemy's victory as painful as possible. looked at each of the elders. Humans invented this concept. They have 1,000 words for it in their languages. They consider it a virtue. On the colony world of, they learned what spite meant. They had captured the colony 3 weeks ago after heavy fighting. Now they were trying to establish control, but the power plants kept exploding. The water treatment facilities kept failing. The communication towers kept falling down. The humans were destroying their own infrastructure. Colonel called the local human leader to demand an explanation. The human was a woman named. She was small and thin and looked like she had not slept in weeks, but she smiled when she faced the officer. Why? Demanded. You are destroying your own city, your own resources, your own future. Yes, agreed, but we are also destroying yours. This is madness. You are only hurting yourselves. Smile grew wider. You still don't understand, do you? We don't care about hurting ourselves. We only care about hurting you. Every power plant we destroy is a power plant you cannot use. Every road we break is a road you cannot travel. Every building we burn is a building you cannot occupy. She leaned forward. You can have this world. You can have every world you take from us. But by the time you finish conquering us, you will have nothing left worth ruling. On the Elder Council received even worse news. Human strike teams had attacked 3 worlds. It should have been impossible. No conquered species had ever struck back at the Empire's home systems. The worlds were too far away, too well defended, too powerful. But humans had found a way. They had sent small ships, hidden in asteroid fields and debris clouds. They had traveled for months, surviving on minimal supplies. They had studied defenses and found the gaps, and when they struck, they did not attack military targets. They attacked food production facilities, water purification systems, power networks. The message was clear. If they would target human civilians, humans would target civilians. The Elder Council was horrified. This is against all rules of warfare, one elder said. They are not following your rules, replied quietly. They never agreed to your rules. They have their own rules, and by their rules, anything is permitted if it helps them survive. What do they want? They want you to feel what they feel. They want you to know fear. They want you to understand that conquering them will cost more than it is worth. Then we will destroy them utterly. We will burn their worlds to ash. Had expected this response. We tried that, he said. 3 weeks ago, we used orbital bombardment on their colony of, we killed everyone. 800,000 humans dead in 1 hour. Good, that should teach them. The next day, human ships attacked our breeding worlds. They destroyed the birthing facilities on 3 planets. 10 million young died. The council chamber was silent. They are not like us, said. When we hurt them, they do not submit. They do not surrender. They do not beg for mercy. They hurt us back. Harder, faster, worse. He looked at the elders with something like pity. You cannot break them. I have studied them for 6 months and I am convinced of this. Pain makes them angry. Loss makes them creative. Desperation makes them dangerous. And they have one more thing we do not understand. What is it? They call it hope. It is the belief that tomorrow can be better than today. It is the ability to imagine victory even when victory is impossible. It makes them irrational. It makes them unpredictable. And it makes them completely, utterly unstoppable. The eldest of the elders, a being who had lived for 12,000 years, spoke for the first time. Then we will send everything we have, 50,000 ships, the entire fleet. We will go to there and burn it from space. Without their home, they will lose this hope you speak of. Wanted to argue. He wanted to tell them that destroying Earth would only make humanity more angry, more desperate, more dangerous. But he was only a historian. They would not listen. Yes, Elder, he said, bowing his head. I will pray for our success. But in his heart, he was already praying for something else. He was praying for mercy, because he was beginning to understand that when this war ended, humans would be the ones deciding who lived and who died. And he was not certain they would choose to be merciful. On Earth, President Han received word of the coming fleet. 50,000 ships, the largest military force ever assembled in the history of the galaxy, coming to destroy humanity's home. She looked at General Shin. "Are we ready?" The old general smiled. It was a smile that would have terrified the elders if they could have seen it. "We have been ready for 6 months, Madam President. We have been waiting for them to come." "Then let them come," President Han said. "Let them come and learn what humanity has prepared for those who threaten our home." Across the solar system, hidden weapons platforms activated. Ships that had been built in secret moved into position. Humanity's trap was ready. All they needed now was for the enemy to walk into it. 50,000 warships, each one the size of a small city, emerged from faster-than-light travel like a swarm of metal locusts. They filled the sensors of every human station and ship. They blocked out the stars. At the front of the fleet, in the largest ship ever built by the Empire, the last emperor watched the distant blue dot that was Earth. He was ancient, even older than the elders. 12,000 years he had ruled. 12,000 years he had watched his empire grow. No enemy had ever truly threatened him. No species had ever resisted for more than a few weeks. Until now. "That is there?" he asked. "Yes, Emperor," his admiral replied. "Third planet from the star. 8 billion humans live there." 8 billion. The Emperor considered this number. By tomorrow, that number will be 0. From Earth, Commander O watched the enemy arrive. She was in charge of the Orbital Defense Network, a system of stations, satellites, and weapons platforms that protected humanity's home. She had 800 ships. She had missiles and lasers and plasma cannons. Against 50,000 enemy warships, it was nothing. But that was not the only thing she had. "Begin Phase 1, she ordered. In the asteroid belt, 1,000 hidden weapons platforms activated. These were not military technology. They were mining equipment, lasers designed to cut asteroids, drills meant to extract ore, explosives used to break rock. For 6 months, humanity had been converting them into weapons, hiding them among the rocks, waiting. The first ships entered the asteroid belt, expecting no resistance. They found death instead. Mining lasers, powerful enough to slice through stone, cut through hulls like paper. Explosives detonated beneath ships that flew too close to innocent-looking rocks. Built from cargo loading equipment fired chunks of metal at incredible speeds, punching holes in enemy vessels. They lost 100 ships in the first 10 minutes. "What is happening?" the Emperor demanded. "The asteroids, they are attacking us, Emperor." "Asteroids do not attack. This is a trick." "Yes, Emperor, a trick, but an effective one." The Emperor ordered his fleet to push through the belt. They did, but it cost them. Every kilometer was a battle. Every rock was a potential enemy. By the time they cleared the asteroids, they had lost 800 ships. 800, and they had not even reached Earth yet. Phase 2 began when the fleet passed Mars. Ships emerged from behind the red planet. Not warships, civilian vessels, cargo haulers and passenger transports and research vessels. They had been hidden in Mars's shadow, their engines cold, waiting for this moment. They laughed at first. What could civilian ships do against warships? They learned quickly. Each civilian ship was packed with explosives. Human volunteers piloted them directly into formations. They did not try to survive. They did not try to escape. They flew straight and true, and when they hit, they took enemy ships with them. 300 volunteers, 300 ships, more than 500 vessels destroyed. On the flagship, the admiral stared at his tactical display. "They are using suicide attacks. Civilians. They are sacrificing their own people. The Emperor did not understand. Why would they do this? They are throwing away lives for nothing. Not for nothing, Emperor, for time. Every attack slows us down. Every battle costs us ships. They are making us pay for every step. Then we will make them pay more. Continue forward. Burn anything that moves. Commander O watched the fleet push closer. They had passed Mars. They had passed the Moon. Now they were entering Earth orbit. This was the moment she had been waiting for. Activate the defense grid, she ordered. Every satellite in Earth orbit came alive. Weapons that had been hidden as communication arrays revealed themselves. Stations that looked like research facilities opened their gun ports. The entire orbital space around Earth became a fortress of fire and steel. The battle for Earth began. Human ships flew against warships, outnumbered 50-1. Missiles streaked through space like angry stars. Lasers painted the darkness with lines of death. Explosions bloomed in the vacuum, silent and beautiful and terrible. Engineer watched the battle from a secret facility on Earth's surface. He was a small man with thick glasses and ink-stained fingers. He had spent his entire life studying the sun, not for war, for terraforming. He had dreamed of using solar energy to transform dead worlds into living ones. Now his research had a different purpose. Project Phoenix is ready, he reported to General Shin. Not yet, the general replied. Wait for my signal. The battle raged for 18 days. Each day they advanced a little further. Each day more human ships died. Each day the situation grew more desperate. But humanity was not alone. On day 15, something impossible happened. New ships appeared at the edge of the solar system, hundreds of them, then thousands. They were not human ships, they were not ships. They were ships from other species, species that they had conquered centuries ago, species that had been slaves for generations. Commander O stared at her screen. Who are they? A transmission came through. The speaker was a being that looked like a tall, blue-skinned humanoid with silver eyes. This is Admiral of the Resistance. We have been watching. We have seen your fight. We have seen you make the bleed. More transmissions followed. A crystalline being representing the Shard Collective. A creature of living light speaking for the others, many others, species that the thought they had broken long ago. We built ships in secret, Admiral continued. We waited for a moment like this, a moment when the Empire was weak, a moment when someone proved they could be beaten. The transmissions combined into a single message, spoken by 1,000 voices. Where humans fight, we fight. The Allied fleet dove into battle. Fresh ships, eager soldiers, centuries of hatred finally finding an outlet. The tide began to turn. The Emperor watched his advantage disappear. His fleet was still larger. He still had more ships, but his soldiers were tired. They had been fighting for 18 days against an enemy that would not stop. Now new enemies were joining the battle, enemies he thought he had destroyed long ago. Emperor, his admiral said, we should retreat, regroup, return with a larger force. No, the Emperor's voice was ice. I have ruled for 12,000 years. I have never retreated. We will push through to Earth. We will destroy there. Without it, this alliance will collapse. He ordered his remaining 15,000 ships to make a final push. Commander O saw them coming. They are making for Earth, she said, all of them. General Shin's voice came through the communication channel. Then it is time. Activate the sun's anger. On the surface, Engineer entered the final commands into his system. I never thought I would use this, he said quietly. I built it to help worlds, not to destroy fleets. I know, General Shin replied, but sometimes the same tool can serve both purposes. Press the activation button. Deep within the sun, something changed. For centuries, humans had studied their star. They had learned its patterns, its cycles, its moods. Engineer had built a system of satellites around the sun, designed to channel its energy for terraforming. Now those satellites did something different. They triggered a focused coronal mass ejection, a carefully aimed burst of solar radiation directed at a specific point in space. The point where the fleet was gathered. The wave of solar fire hit the enemy ships like the fist of an angry god. Shields failed, electronics died, ships that had survived 100 battles went dark and began to drift. 15,000 warships crippled in an instant. The Emperor's flagship went dark. Emergency lights flickered on. The Emperor found himself floating in zero gravity, surrounded by the bodies of his crew. His ship was dead. His fleet was dead. He had lost. A human voice came through the emergency radio. It was Commander O. Fleet, this is Earth Defense Command. Your ships are disabled. You have no weapons, no engines, no shields. You have two choices. Surrender and face judgment for your crimes, or drift in the dark until your air runs out. She paused. Choose wisely. One by one, ships began transmitting surrender codes. Captains who had never known defeat gave up their commands. Soldiers who had conquered dozens of worlds put down their weapons. The Emperor of the Empire stood in the ruins of his command chamber and felt something he had not experienced in 12,000 years. Defeat. Total, complete, absolute defeat. He thought about running, about hiding, about finding some way to escape. But there was nowhere to go. The humans controlled the system. The allied species controlled the surrounding space. His empire, his beautiful empire, was falling apart around him. High Commander appeared on a small screen, calling from his own disabled ship. Emperor, what do we do? The Emperor looked at the being who had started this war. The commander who had attacked new and begun the destruction of everything they had built. What are these creatures? The Emperor asked. And broken from months of fighting, answered slowly. They are what happens when a death world breeds survivors for 4 billion years. They are nature's answer to extinction. They are humans. The Emperor stared at the blue planet below him, the small, fragile world that had his empire, the world that had refused to bow. And we thought we could conquer them, he said softly. Yes, Emperor, we were wrong. The Emperor closed his eyes. Yes, he agreed, we were very, very wrong. On Earth, people looked up at the sky. They could see the flashes of the battle. They could see the glow of the disabled fleet. They knew, somehow, that the war was almost over. General Shin stood beside President Han, watching the same sky. We did it, the president said. We actually did it. No, the general replied. We survived. Now comes the hard part. What is the hard part? The general looked at her with ancient, tired eyes. Now we have to decide what kind of victors we want to be. In the great assembly hall of New Geneva, representatives from a dozen species gathered to witness history. Human diplomats sat beside rebels. Shard collective crystals hummed next to light beings. And in the center, guarded but not chained, stood the former rulers of the empire. Ambassador walked to the podium. She was a woman in her 50s, with silver hair and calm eyes. She had spent her career negotiating trade agreements and cultural exchanges. Now she was about to speak words that would reshape the galaxy. 50,000 years ago, she began, the Empire began conquering other species. They believed they were superior. They believed the universe was theirs to rule. They believed that strength gave them the right to take whatever they wanted. She looked at the delegation. 18 months ago, they came to humanity. They gave us 72 hours to surrender. They expected us to bow like every other species had bowed. They expected us to submit. They expected us to break. Her voice hardened. We did not break. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Species that had been slaves for centuries watched with hope in their eyes. They had never seen the humbled. They had never imagined it was possible. Today, the empire ends, not because we destroyed them we could have. We had the power. We had the right. After what they did to our people, no one would have blamed us for wiping them from existence. She paused. But that is not who we are. The delegation shifted nervously. The emperor himself was not present. He was on trial for crimes against sentient species. But High Commander was there, the being who had started the war, waiting to hear humanity's judgment. We have decided on the following terms. The empire will be dissolved. Their conquered territories will be freed. Their military will be reduced to a defensive force only, and they will pay reparations to every species they harmed, not in resources but in knowledge. They will share their technology. They will help rebuild what they destroyed. They will contribute to the healing of worlds they wounded. She looked directly at. They will not be exterminated. They will not be enslaved. They will not be treated as they treated others. Why? The word burst from before he could stop it. We killed millions of your people. We burned your colonies. We tried to destroy your. Why would you show us mercy? Ambassador smiled slightly. Because mercy is not about what you deserve. It is about who we choose to be. You tried to teach us that the universe is ruled by the strong. We are teaching you a different lesson. She addressed the entire assembly. The galaxy has been ruled by fear for too long, species conquering species, empires rising and falling on mountains of corpses. We offer a different path, not a human empire. We have no interest in ruling anyone, but a council of equals, a place where disputes are settled with words instead of weapons, where different species can learn from each other instead of destroying each other. She raised her hand, and a document appeared on every screen in the hall. This is the charter of the new Galactic Council. Any species that agrees to its principles may join. We will protect each other. We will trade with each other. We will grow together. One by one, species stepped forward to add their signatures. They were first, their blue hands pressing against the screen. The Shard Collective followed, their crystals chiming in harmony. Then the and others, until the document glowed with the marks of a dozen civilizations. When it was done, Ambassador spoke once more. We humans are small. We are fragile. We live brief lives on a world that constantly tries to kill us. But we learned something in our long struggle to survive. She looked at every face in the room, human and alien alike. The universe does not care if you live or die, so we decided to care. We care for each other, we care for our allies, and we care very, very deeply about those who threaten what we love. Her eyes found the delegation. They called us primitives. They were right, we are primitive. We still feel rage, we still feel love, we still feel spite. And those primitive emotions built the fire that burned their empire down. But those same emotions also let us forgive. Let us hope. Let us offer our hands to former enemies and say, we can do better, all of us together. She sat down. The room was silent for a long moment. Then, slowly, applause began. It started with the and spread until every species was cheering. Even some of the joined, those who had seen enough death and wanted something different. History had changed. 50 years later, on Earth, in a university classroom, a different kind of history was being made. Professor stood before his students. He was old now, even by standards, his purple shell faded to a soft lavender. But his 6 eyes were still bright, and his mind was still sharp. Around him sat students of every species, humans and species that had never met before the war, now learning together. Today, said, we conclude our study of the human war. I have one final question for you. Why did the Empire lose? A student spoke first. We underestimated them. We thought they were primitive. True, agreed, but incomplete anyone else. A human student raised her hand. We had better strategy. We prepared traps they didn't expect. Also true, also incomplete. A student tried. The Alliance. You lost because other species joined humanity. Yes, but why did they join? What made them believe they could win? The classroom fell silent, smiled. He had asked this question every semester for 30 years, and the answer was never simple. The Empire lost, he said, because we could not understand what we were fighting. We had conquered 17 species. All of them submitted when they saw our power. We thought this was natural. We thought that weak creatures always surrender to strong ones. He brought up images on the screen, images of Captain Park's final charge, of Sergeant Bay's guerrilla fighters, of Dr. Lee treating enemy wounded. But humans are not like other creatures. They evolved on a death world, surrounded by things that wanted to kill them. They learned that giving up means dying. They learned that surrender is extinction. And they learned something else, something I still do not fully understand. He paused. They learned that some things are worth dying for. Not survival, any creature values survival, but principles, ideas, other people. They will give their lives for strangers, for future generations they will never meet, for concepts like freedom and dignity and hope. A young human in the back of the classroom shifted uncomfortably. He was used to being the species that everyone studied. It felt strange. "Professor," he said, "you make us sound like heroes. We're not, we're just people." Turned to him with those ancient, alien eyes. "Yes, you are people, but you are people who refuse to stop being people. When we conquered they became less than they were. When we conquered they dimmed their light to survive. Every species we ruled lost something essential about themselves." He looked around the room. "But humanity never did. We imprisoned you and you built resistance networks. We killed your leaders and new leaders rose. We tried to break your spirit and you laughed at us. Laughed. Even facing death you made jokes. You sang songs. You told stories about victory even while you were losing." He shook his head in wonder that had not faded after 50 years. "You are not dangerous because of what you are. You are dangerous because of what you refuse to stop being. You refuse to stop hopping. You refuse to stop fighting. And most terrifying of all, you refuse to stop forgiving." He gestured at the mixed classroom. "We could have been allies. You offered peace before the war. You offered peace during the war. And when you won, when you had every right to destroy us, you offered peace again. You gave us a seat at your table. You let us learn beside your children." A student in the front row spoke quietly. Why would you do that?" The human student thought about it. "Because holding grudges is exhausting. Because we'd rather make friends than enemies. I don't know, it just seems right." "That," said, "is exactly what I mean. For you, forgiveness comes naturally. For most species, it must be learned. But humans are born with it. You have to be taught hate. Left alone, you default to kindness." Class ended and the students filed out, but the young human stayed behind. "Professor, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "You were there during the war. You were on their side. How do you feel now teaching at a human university, living on Earth?" Was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft. "I feel grateful. I feel ashamed of what my people did. And I feel something I never felt during the Empire's rule." "What's that?" Hope looked out the window at a campus full of students from a dozen worlds. The Empire lasted 40,000 years, but it was always afraid. Afraid of rebellion, afraid of weakness, afraid of change. We ruled through fear, and fear is a cold companion. He turned back to the student. "Now I live in a galaxy ruled by cooperation, by choice, by people who help each other because they want to, not because they must. I have seen more kindness in 50 years of human-led peace than I saw in 800 years of imperial conquest." The student nodded slowly. "So you're happy here?" "I am, are you?" The student thought about it. Yeah, I am. I like having friends from other worlds. I like learning about different species. I like that we're building something new." Then the war was worth it, said. Not the dying, never the dying, but what came after, what you chose to create instead of destroy. The student gathered his things and headed for the door, but he paused at the threshold. Professor, one more question. You said we're dangerous because of what we refuse to stop being. What is that exactly? Smiled, a strange expression on a face, but one he had learned from his human colleagues. Human, you refuse to stop being human. With all that means, the stubbornness and the kindness, the rage and the forgiveness, the fear and the hope. You are imperfect creatures with impossible dreams, and somehow you make those dreams real. The student grinned. We're pretty weird, huh? The strangest species in the galaxy, agreed. Thank the stars you're on our side. The student laughed and walked out into the sunshine, joining his friends, human, all mixed together, talking and laughing and being young. Watch them go. 50 years ago, he had warned the Elder Council that humans could not be broken. They had not listened. Now those elders were gone, their empire dust, their legacy shame. But humanity was still here, still building, still hopping, still refusing to be anything other than what they were. And the galaxy was better for it. Gathered his notes and walked out into the afternoon sun. Around him, the future was happening, a future where different species learned from each other instead of conquering each other, a future where former enemies became friends, a future that should have been impossible. But then, humans specialized in impossible things. They always had. And now, thanks to them, so did everyone else.